Welcome back to the 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show. My name is Wayne Kimmel, managing partner of 76 Capital, the sports venture capital company. And on this show, I get the opportunity to interview top sports entrepreneurs, athletes, and executives who are shaping and many times changing the overall sports business industry. You can subscribe to our show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our 76 Capital website. Today, my guest on our show is Belinda Oakley. She's the CEO of Sodexo Live North America. She leads over 20,000 team members at more than 150 partner venues throughout the U.S. and Canada, including stadiums, convention centers, museums, zoos, aquariums, skiers, and more. Sodexo Live is the global hospitality leader that handles food and beverage operations at some of the most iconic events and venues all around the world, including F1 Miami, the 2024 Summer Olympics, Hard Rock Stadium, Caesars Superdome, T-Mobile Park, the Tour de France, and many more. Belinda, welcome to our 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show.
Thank you for having me. How fun. And my job sounds really good when you say it like that. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I mean, I want to go to some of these events with you and eat some food. I mean, I'm so excited to jump in and hear more about all this.
Yeah. You have to maintain a pretty good personal exercise regime to be in this business, because there is food everywhere, as you might imagine.
Well, and I know it's really good food too, but before we get into all the details of what happens from the Sodexo Live perspective, I would love to hear your story. I hear it's a really unique one, and it's an amazing sort of leadership story. So please share that with our 76 Capital audience.
Yeah, look, I think it's interesting. I think in many ways I'm an unlikely CEO, but the more I have sort of reflected on what leadership is at its core, I actually think the more likely it is in a funny way. I love, there's a gentleman, Clay Christensen, who's passed away now, but he's got a beautiful quote about, if you want to help people, be in management, because if it's done right, management is the noblest of professions. And I thoroughly agree with him, but I certainly didn't start my life or even exit my high school education with a view to be a CEO of a company running 150 venues and 20,000 employees. That was certainly never part of the path. So I'm originally from the deep south as Hobart, Tasmania in Australia. And I was born very, not even necessarily an area that's considered Australian by Australians. But I actually grew up even further away. I grew up off the coast of Jakarta in a very small 50 square mile island called Christmas Island with about 1,000 people on it. And so I think being an other in situations has been a big part of my life on reflection as you tie all those pieces together. But really was in my goal in life, and certainly part of my childhood and upbringing was all entertainment. I loved music. I was a songwriter and have been a songwriter for all of my life. Like, still say I am, even though I'm not doing much of it these days. And really left high school only knowing one thing, which was that I was quite interested in people and quite interested in helping people. And so I started in psychology, was my undergraduate, my very short-lived undergraduate. And as a latchkey kid, I think at 18 in Australia, it's a very different environment about college. If you do go to college, you're usually living at a home in a share house, not in a dorm on property. And a lot of us are working our way through college. And so that was certainly my experience. And I was working full-time in a franchised food retail environment. And the company came to me about 6 months into my first year of psychology and said, we think you've got real talent. We'd like you to take a regional operations role and manage 25 businesses across 2 states at the time, Western Australia and Northern Territory. And our only ask is you can't tell anyone how old you are. And so I, at the time, of course, looked down this opportunity of, wow, I just get to keep doing what I'm doing, which is managing a small team and working with customers and trying to figure out how to run a P&L more effectively and how to market a business more effectively. And I get to go and do that with a company car at 19. All right, done. This is what I'll do for the rest of my life. And so very much didn't hand select being in food operations. It found me But I'm a big believer that there's something about being over skis in leadership that is really the breeding ground for growth, I think. And being 19 with no really earned authority, not through education, not through experience. Franchise owners tend to be people who went into business for themselves so that they didn't have to deal with some 19-year-old coming around and telling them how to do it better. So you have to build very different influencing skills, and you have to be a very good listener. I think you have to really understand what is the driving force behind someone's life and how do you connect with that. And I would say that ethos, that learning curve at 19 of, there are many ways to skin a cat, as they say, and what matters is not what you think. What matters is what is being pulled from you versus you pushing, and how do you connect that as a leader through communication, through understanding of goals, and through inspiration. And that saw me all the way from Australia to the UK, now to the US, and along the way, probably two other key pivotal parts, I think, of my leadership experience was deciding to go back to college in my mid-30s and did my master's of business at Daniels College of Business here in University of Denver, and realizing, after feeling like an imposter in so many rooms as my career just grew and grew and grew, that actually having those foundational experiences, the school of life, so to speak, of 20 years of working in the industry was hugely impactful, and developing a language out of that master's program was such a reassuring outcome. I think the best ROI of my EMBA was actually meeting my husband in that program, and so I always say I got 2 kids out of it and a husband, so it was a very good investment in my future. But I would say, for me, being a young mum was when I was first asked to be a CEO. So I think also being forced to be over your skis at a time in life when you're trying to figure out where the balance is was also hugely impactful. So my life, in summary, has been an accident in many ways. And the only clear path I have known is wanting to be the same person from 9 to 5 as I was from 5 to 9. It was one of my personal commitments when I was very young. And having this innate desire to help people. And somehow that landed me as a CEO of a wonderful sports and leisure company. But all the fun parts, of course, are in the stories in between. So I thought I'd share a few of those about the leadership journey.
Well, we certainly love the idea of helping people. That's one of the big things at 76 Capitals we talk about, is we always want to work with people that are smart, that are nice, and want to change the world.
Oh, I
And
love that. Love that.
thank you. And I love what you have to say about, wanting to help people. And, was there someone in your life, was it a mentor or a coach or a parent or someone that really helped you develop, and someone that you were able to kind of bounce ideas off of, while you were making this incredible journey of yours?
Look, I think there's so many. I do think one of the things that has always I've just generally always been curious about the way we work, about the way we feel, how that drives what we do. And so I think there was an innate curiosity. My mother was a journalist and my father was in human resources. So I think there's something about that blend of the curiosity behind journalism for what the real story is, and then the people-oriented focus of human resources in terms of optimizing. I think my parents absolutely had a big impact on the way I look at the world. But I think for me, and that's the thing I love most about being in a leadership position and working in an organization where you can create jobs, is I look at everybody who gave me an opportunity at every stage of my career, every person that ever gave me a job, anybody who ever gave me a promotion. And I think of them very much as a key part of, kind of my leadership evolution and what I would consider to be a mentor, because this is what, for me, mentors are. or maybe it's sponsors is a better way to term it. Someone, you can always see something in someone that they don't see in themselves. And I think I had a number of people who have done that in my life, who just have helped hold a mirror up to something that, you know, you're always trying to figure out what's wrong with you, not what's really right about you. And I think I've been blessed by a number of those. I always come back to, I've got a few people in my life. I've got a former professor, a former boss, and a former co-worker, and they're kind of my unofficial board of directors. And so I'll often use them as a sounding board. And what I love about it is it's not about your job. I think in life today, or in society generally, we tend to try to think these are compartmentalized pieces, that who you are at work can be this distinguished thing from who you are as a husband, or as a mother, or as a daughter, and is distinguished from your health, and it's not. This is all part of the same life. There is no work or life. And so I use my board of directors, my unofficial mentor group, for lots of things. I use them for parenting advice. I use them for organizational structure advice. I use them, you know, in so many ways. And I truly, I count myself lucky. But I think to gain mentorship and to gain that, you also have to give it and you have to ask for it. So, you know, I think I've been lucky, but I've also put a lot on the table for people, which helps people help you.
Well, you've held a number of serious leadership roles prior to Sodexo Live. You know, so we can. I'd love to hear a little bit about that, about some of the
Yeah.
different, you know, companies and brands that you worked with, and then I'm really excited a bit to jump into to hear about, you know, what's going on now at Sodexo Live.
Mm. Where would you like me to start? That was three questions in one.
I know. That's where it's amazing. I mean, like, one of the things I've, you know, just taking a look at your background, some of the brands, Mrs. Fields, TCBY, the
Mm.
bakeries, I mean, it's amazing. You know, what you've done, you know, at the school dining programs. I mean, just all the things that you've done, and then has that all has led
Yeah.
up to where you are today.
Yeah, I think it's the thread that runs through. I always think, for me, when I look at my experience set, and I think it's like everybody's story, there are always diverging paths that at the time seem quite randomized, and it's afterwards that you're able to sort of find those red threads that lead through them. And I think for me, the thread through all of it has been food. I've been in food my entire career and love it. There's something about, I think, food as a unifier, food as a way to express community and culture, but also food is such an accessible industry. That's what I love about it, is that you can start in any role in a food establishment and take my job. I truly believe that. I think it's it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you've been, where you've come from. If you have a passion for people and you have a passion for great hospitality, the food industry can be an incredible ladder to whatever you want it to be. And I think the other piece, of course, has been leadership and inspiration. Those two pieces have been a big piece of my my journey. I think I come back to this. CEOs always sound really interesting. I think it sounds interesting to people. I remember someone buying me once this. I use it as like a tea bag holder now because I'm a big tea drinker. But it says something like "Everybody wants to be CEO," and it was given to me by an old a neighbor of mine, and I still use it for my little tea holder. But I laugh at it, and I think very few people should want to be a CEO because it's a very lonely job. You tend to really be. I'm going to get some reactions, by the way. This is my computer. I might be able to give you balloons later if you're lucky too. But you tend to be quite isolated, and there needs to be. You have to have a certain level of internal fortitude to maintain your responsibility to be separate and at the same time be in everything. And it's not. I think if you're pursuing C-suite generally with ambition as your primary driver, you're probably going to be bitterly disappointed. I love the idea that, you climb the mountain, or you climb, and then you realize there's no there. You have to be very clear on what your there is. What are you doing it for? And I think the first time I was asked, probably, if I look back over my career, the red threads being the food and people, the decision to become a CEO was the most important decision I think I've ever made. And it was not a decision I was looking for or I took lightly. I briefly touched on it, but at the time I had my first little girl, who's now almost 7. And I was just coming back off maternity leave. And of course, maternity leave in the United States is very short comparatively. And so I think it's a lot for people to process in any job. Then you compound that with an executive level job, and you compound it with a job that requires a lot of travel. And in our business, in the hospitality industry across multiple locations, people will ask where you office, and the running joke is you office in an airport, because you need to be in the business. This is a people business. So I was already having quite a difficult time imagining going back to my day job. And the phone call came in from my then organization to say, instead of going back into this big job that you're nervous about going back into, we want you to go back into a bigger one. And we want you to take responsibility for this schools business, 4,400 schools around the country, 16,000 employees. And for me, holding this newborn baby in my arms and being told, we want you to take responsibility for the health of America's children, it felt like a lot. And so my response was to suggest 3 or 4 people they could call who I thought would be better than I would be at the job. And one of the people who's still a mentor of mine, I distinctly remember him saying, I'm not calling them, I'm calling you. The food business and the business of management and people are just exciting in and of themselves. And then when you go and throw that into the middle of some of these venues that you've mentioned, whether it's, NFL stadiums, or it's beautiful cultural destinations like galleries and museums. I mean, it's truly doing what I have loved for my entire career, and now doing it in the most iconic venues you could imagine. I mean, you just pinch yourself to be a part of it.
Well, just the other day I drove by Hard Rock Stadium, so maybe we'll start with that. So what's it like on a Miami Dolphins Sunday kickoff or Monday night football game? What's it like for you with all these people descending on, the stadium? Your chefs and people are making all the food, and what's going on in your mind when all that's happening?
I love that question, because you can literally put me. I think the last time I was at a Dolphins game was around December 14th last year. And I distinctly remember it because unfortunately it wasn't a good night for the Dolphins, but it was a good night for the Tennessee Titans, who are now our partners. So all's well that ends well. But the energy is incredible, and I can literally feel it as I'm talking about it. And for me, I'm incredibly lucky. When most people, when they go to a game, you're experiencing obviously every interaction point, from coming through parking to security to ticketing to stopping at a concession stand to watching an incredible game. I get this special behind the scenes where I am walking through kitchens. I am behind the lines talking to chefs. I am meeting with some of our primary stakeholders. I am in the suite having a look at the hospitality setups. So I have this very special, and frankly, the worst part about being, in one of these venues is I very rarely see any action that's actually happening at the game, because I'm spending our venues. But I am honestly in awe. I mean, it is watching the way an event comes together from darkness. And as our team will tell you, an 8 o'clock game on a Monday night or a 7 o'clock game on a Monday night, they're there at 6 a.m. in the morning. I mean, there might be no one in the venue, but they're there. And the journey to kickoff is it's not for the faint of heart. And then once you've got 50,000 people filing in the building, it's almost like a wedding. You can do no more. At this point, all of your preparation is done, and you just have to smile for the photos. And I think for me, I get to see I get to be a part of that and just be in awe of my incredible experience makers who just do us proud every event. And Miami and Hard Rock is such a great example. What an amazing venue, from a Dolphins game to the Miami Open to Formula One, Miami Grand Prix. I mean, to a Beyonce concert, or Taylor Swift, to FIFA World Cup. I mean, the way this venue transitions itself and the way our teams transition that experience, because the fan base is completely different, as you might imagine, for a country show as it is from a Dolphins game. So that changes everything for us.
Absolutely. One of the things look, the whole food experience at a game has changed, right? It was growing up, it was hot dogs, peanuts, soda, beer, not much more. I mean, maybe popcorn. I love popcorn. So now it's like that's just your base,
It's
right? I
table
mean,
stakes. Yeah. It's table stakes. Now, the funny thing is, when you look at, and it's always interesting because this is still primary. If you look at a category of spend, people still want this is the thing. You grew up with it. You might think, I'm going to do something different, but you find yourself back at hot dogs. It's amazing. We laugh at that in the ballpark. It's on our MLB business. The fan favorites, as you would say, are still fan favorites for very good reason, because you've got it's not a hot dog. It's a memory. It's amazing. It's a memory in a bun. And so I think what is so fun for us, to your point though, is as a fan, you get to choose. You get to choose what experience, what memory you want to create. For our chefs and for our teams, they get to have serious fun. I mean, you think about what it must have been like to work in hospitality in the 80s and 90s, for example, when you're just pumping out chicken tenders and you're pumping out pepperoni pizza and you're pumping out hot dogs. We've got, foot-long Dungeness crab rolls or lobster rolls topped with Topeka caviar. We've got, Wagyu beef burgers. I mean, the fun the teams can have. And I think that's what I think so interesting for the hospitality industry in general, and particularly in sports and leisure, is the next generation who are attracted to this business. They're working in a whole new world. I mean, the tiering of experience expectations, as we continue to see, I think a lot of people thought with revenge spending out of COVID, you'd sort of see eventually this softening of the VVVIP requested experiences. But I would say there is no ceiling. We continue to see just this, and it might represent a small percentage. We might still be doing tremendous amount of hot dogs and hamburgers, but the desire to elevate, to be able to be able to try something that you wouldn't even try in a restaurant, and for that to be uniquely Miami in the example we were talking about, that is the best career we could offer to people, is to be a part of that. It's very special.
Well, you have the Olympics coming up this summer.
Yes.
And
Just a little thing.
Just a little thing. So it's 40,000 meals or so that you have to serve a day. Is that the number?
Yes. And of course you can imagine with the athletes, depending on when their competitions are, they might have to get up at 3 a.m. in the morning in order to eat protein to be ready to fuel themselves. So, for our teams, it's not just the 40 million meals a day, but it's the 24-hour operation for the entire Olympics. So, we're very fortunate. We have about 6,000 experience makers working the event. It's such a special Olympics on top of that. I mean, if you think about the challenge, yes, obviously it's in Paris. And so you want to create the relevance to the French home of the Olympics, but you have athletes from all over the world. You have athletes with so many different requirements. You have visitors from all over the world. So the diversity of the menu is incredible. I think the other really interesting thing, because it is being termed the most sustainable Olympics. It's a huge requirement and goal of the Olympic Committee for Paris. 80% of the items that we're serving are from France, and 25% of the items on every menu are within 150 miles of the competition site. Crazy thing. So we're building you're building these spaces, the main hall that has 3,600 seats in it. There's nothing there. I mean, we walked it a few months ago and it's just a shell. And of course, it will be the greatest restaurant in the world very imminently. But all of the furnishings, everything that's being built for it will be reused. These are the sort of commitments to, again, the most sustainable Olympics. So you have such incredible culinary expertise in France to leverage, just such a special city to be doing it. I mean, beach volleyball under the Eiffel Tower or equestrian at the Palace of Versailles, it's pretty special, pretty special.
So if someone's going to the Olympics this summer, what do they have to try? Like, what's the one thing or two things that they have to eat if they're there?
I mean, everything, frankly. They're in Paris, so they should be eating plenty of baked items. That the patisserie, our Lenote patisserie, which a little fun fact about Sodexo Live, but we actually have our own bakery and patisserie business called Lenote, which also has it's very similar to many of the famous cooking schools you might know in the US market, but we of course are the premier baking and cooking school in France. So anything from our Lenote pastry collection is pretty special. I think again, you don't see the artistry. And of course, I'm a bakery girl and go back to my roots. So you don't see the artistry in many parts of the world that you see in France, and particularly that you see from Lenote. So I would recommend that.
So for you as a female CEO of a very large company, Sodexo Live, 20,000 employees, most other CEOs, even in the hospitality industry, in the just general corporate world, are typically are held by males.
Yes.
How does that make you feel? How is that? Is that something that you're really proud of what you've done? Are there things that you're trying to do to just make sure that other young girls like your two daughters are next?
Yeah, I love that, and I always have my daughters behind me here because I am. It's interesting. I'm always struck when I meet people. They can work for me. They cannot work for me. They can be. I'm amazed. And we have incredible female executives that we work with on our client partner side who just I find so inspiring. And what I find interesting is I'm often asked by them when the doors are closed, how do you do this? And I always laugh because I say, how are you doing this? Like, what makes you think I've got it figured out? But there is, I think to your point, there's a reality that you are another. You are. This is not the face that people are used to seeing, and so to me, it's a little bit like making that decision to be a CEO. It's a huge responsibility with that. You have to do it right, and so I think for me, frankly, staying true to my femininity, staying true to the things that are the other, not joining up and trying to do the role in the way that it is role modeled, is really important, because that has always been for me the secret sauce, has been the truest version of yourself. And so if I can be a role model for that, and the CEO job gives me the gift of a platform, I would have been a role model for that, whether I was a manager in a bakery. But being able to do that on a scale as a CEO and that being meaningful to others as a title, it's a huge opportunity and responsibility and a gift, a true gift. But I will always say, frankly, I don't think anyone should fear being an other in those dynamics. It is your strongest skill that you're bringing, is the fact that you do not play by the same rules, you do not communicate in the same way, and you might have just learned observations about what works for you. I find there's some really interesting studies about the role of gender diversity on boards, particularly females on boards. And it's quite interesting because one of the things that I remember, I actually did a paper on this at one point. I found it fascinating that homogeny in leadership groups is actually a good predictor of performance success, financial performance success, if the market is stable. When there is disruption in the market or disruption in the business, you need the higher levels of female representation on boards made a huge difference to a company's likelihood of avoiding bankruptcy and a likelihood of achieving a turnaround. I look at the world today and say, we are never going back to business as usual. Anyone who's waiting for things to settle down and be normal again, you're going to be waiting a long time. So I think this is even more of a call to action for diversity in leadership. And I say, you know, gender is a piece of it, obviously, but it's a much broader conversation than that. So being able to start shifting that paradigm, being a role model for others, it's a true gift. And I don't think anyone should ever think of it as a burden, because it starts with how you think about it. It starts with how you feel about it. So proud to be a female CEO and hoping I see more of them.
Well, Belinda, it's been amazing having you on our 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show. And as we start to wind down here, you know, one of the things that I just think about is really the fact that you have, you know, you're in the world where, and from the hospitality perspective, where so many, this is where people are, you're providing the food, the good feelings for the rest of the world, right?
Mhm.
I mean, what's amazing today is what's happening is just so many people are interested in the whole sports, media, entertainment world. It's what people are doing in their free time. It's where people want to work in this industry today. And how do you create the right overall experience so that people do feel good, so that while they're, you know, and they have that great feeling when they're there with you, eating your food in whatever venue that is,
Mm.
but the overall experience is really special too. And how do you make that all happen?
I think it's really interesting. I was just looking at something today, and it's a little bit dated, but it was this sort of archetypes of who it was that was coming to a game. And I think they had 4 or 5 archetypes. This was only a decade ago, but they had these 4 or 5 types of individuals that were going to a ball game. And so this is what they're looking for. And I think this idea of individualized experiences and really not trying to categorize these archetypes, but providing that choose your own adventure, whether that's in what you eat, whether that's in how you interact. Do you want to talk to someone, or do you want to just use your phone at all scan points, not to have to speak to anyone? Do you want to leave your seat? Do you not want to leave your seat? I think the burden is on us really to provide these pathways of choice, and not to oversimplify or categorize the experience that we think someone is seeking, but provide this multitude of pathways. And I think in order to do that, there's a couple of things. I think there's two key pieces. One of it is really trying to stay on the cutting edge of technology and innovation, because this is the slowest it'll ever be. It's only going to keep speeding up. So how do we keep being conscious of what could work, what is working, and making sure we're deploying that as quickly as possible? But I ultimately come back to the best way to create memorable experiences, regardless of what someone came in seeking, is to have incredible people. And the best way to have incredible people is to take care of them. And so for me, I think the onus, regardless of whatever technology, whatever innovation, whatever special menus we create, this is still a people business. And I'm proud to say that that's our primary goal, is making sure we take care of the people that take care of all our incredible guests.
Well, one last thing before we wrap up, I'd love to hear, you know, some of the stats around your business. I mean, I know they're just massive with all the different venues, and you know that you provide these incredible experiences. What are some of the numbers behind all this?
Oh my gosh. Well, it depends on the event, I guess. I think, you've mentioned quite a few of them already in terms of 20,000 associates and 150 venues. I think, again, some of our largest plated dinners are in the multiple thousands, where we are doing upcoming a very large convention that's going to have 160,000 people at it. You look at something like Formula One. I think this year's numbers are about 180,000 attendees over the 3 days, and the land mass that you're covering on that. It's one of my favorites, actually, because if you look at what we have to achieve from a logistics perspective, it's truly remarkable watching ice being hauled across Turn 5, because once the gates open, we can't transfer anything, and we've got 60 different kitchen locations across the whole venue. So I think that the fun facts might surprise you. Is probably one of our number one sellers is water, which most people think of hot dogs or beer, and no, we're all staying hydrated according to the stats. So yeah, we have a lot of fun with that, and I think again, it depends event to event, whether it's a Morgan Whalen show or as we're assembling for Taylor Swift, we have our Taylor Swift committee because we have a number of her shows coming up. The sales of our cocktails will be very different in Taylor Swift than they were in Morgan Whalen. So it's sort of every event is a unique set of stats in and of itself, and we love geeking out over that stuff.
I have to say one more thing. So what are some of the brands that you work with that are sort of like collaborations with you, Sodexo Live, and that are part of the overall experience? Or is it brands? Do you have like other restaurateurs, or how does that sometimes work with you?
It's a great question. I love the question, because I think there are national and regional brands that have a real role to play, especially in concourse and in concession. So when you think about a Chick-fil-A or you think about some of these, iconic QSR retail brands, Starbucks in our convention centers. I mean, if you think of all of the top national and regional brands, we have a relationship with all of them at this point in time. But what I am most proud of, and where we over-index, is local partners. I think you should feel like you're in New Orleans when you're at a Saints game, and you should feel like you're in Indy at a Colts game. And you can't achieve that with national brands. And even with regional brands, it's more difficult to achieve. So I'm probably most proud of our local restaurant partners that we have in different markets. You look at something like Miami, and what we do for Formula One, the amount, I think there was about 70 different local restaurateurs that we had involved in Formula One this year, because a Cubano is not a Cubano unless it's being produced in Miami. So I think our over-index is on local partners, because for us, it's not just actually about the menu, it's about the community connection. Oftentimes, those local partners will lead us to phenomenal food recovery partners. You can imagine at some of these events, for us, we're going to have a lot of production. Net zero is incredibly important to us. So being able to reposition that leftover to make sure that it goes to people in need, all of those community partnerships tend to be connected through those local partners. So while the big brands and the big known names are the ones that probably get the most attention, it's all our smaller partners, our sommeliers partners in LA, our restaurant partners at Hollywood Bowl. These folks are incredible. They really bring LA to life in Hollywood Bowl, as an example.
Well, that's amazing. Again, thank you so much for joining us on our show. I cannot wait to watch the Olympics. I'm just not going to watch the fans. I'm going to see what they're eating, and that'll be my fun.
And just when you watch the opening ceremony, and there's a lot of boats obviously on the Seine taking the athletes. We do some interesting things, and one of which is our Bateau Parisien boats. So many of the athletes are actually going to be coming down the Seine on our boats as well. So enjoy that. One of them is a Michelin star offer and an electric boat, the only electric boat on the Seine. So some other fun facts for you.
Amazing. Well, again, this was amazing. Everyone, you got to go out and really take a look at everything that Belinda Oakley has done. She's the CEO of Sodexo Live North America. Thank you so much for joining us on our 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a real pleasure.